I spent 5 years strategically pursuing Paul as part of my survival mission. The system told me that as long as we successfully got married, I would be allowed to continue living in this world. But on the day of our wedding, when I waited with full anticipation for him to place the ring on my finger, Paul publicly ran away from the wedding, just because his unattainable first love said, "I'm back." After sending off all the guests, the system's voice rang in my ears. "Host, your mission has failed. Erasure imminent." After being with the system for so long, I begged it to let me choose my own way of dying. So when he pushed me to the ground for the sake of his unattainable first love, the reef beneath me pierced through my body. Chapter 1. I smiled as I sent away the last guest, then sat blankly in the banquet hall. The luxurious white wedding dress, the exquisite makeup. I should have been happy. Yet at this moment my heart felt completely dead. Today wasn't only my wedding day. It was the day I was supposed to complete my mission. As long as Paul and I completed the ceremony, I would be able to keep living. I had looked forward to this day. Even the wedding dress was chosen by Paul, and the venue and decorations were all carefully arranged by him. I waited for him to come pick me up this morning, but even past 9 he didn't show. So I called him and sent him messages. All of them sank without a trace, no response at all. At 10 o'clock, I had no choice but to head to the hotel alone. On the way I kept messaging him. I already guessed he might run from the wedding, yet I still gave him a sliver of trust. But now all of that trust and hope burst like a bubble. My cousin Miranda, who had been with me this whole time, finally couldn't hold back and muttered angrily, "Paul, what the hell is wrong with you? Running away on the wedding day." 10 years ago, in the real world, I fell into a coma and arrived in this novel world. The system told me that I was the expendable second female lead. As long as I successfully pursued the male lead and married him, I could go back. If not, I would be erased. My family and Paul's family had been close for generations. Paul and I grew up together. But when he was 4, he was lost and ended up growing in an orphanage. He wasn't taken back to the Gu family until age 14. At that time, the me in this world was only 11. Both families hoped we would be together. I clearly had a great advantage, yet pursuing him was incredibly difficult. In everyone's eyes, I loved Paul to the point of madness. But no one knew it was simply my desire to survive. I thought of yesterday. Paul held me like a treasure, gently whispering with joy in his voice, "Jessica, tomorrow you'll be my bride." But now looking back, all of it feels painfully fake. I didn't say anything. I stared at the entrance of the hall, still ridiculously hoping that Paul might suddenly appear. The system's voice echoed in my ears. Alicia. Of course I knew her name. Alicia was 2 years older than Paul. When Paul was in the orphanage and was bullied by other children, Alicia was the one who protected him. So in Paul's heart, she always held a special place. And when he was brought back home, Alicia came with him. They sent her to a private high school, remade her life with money and resources, all because of her past care for Paul. Alicia liked Paul, but his family disapproved. Their social statuses were too different. And because of my mission, the two eventually fought fiercely, and Alicia left the country and married someone else. Rumor said she didn't marry well. Her husband had violent tendencies. I let out a bitter laugh. "She's back," the system replied. "She arrived at dawn. Paul went to pick her up." Heh, so they spent the whole night together. Those 10 years he was missing had long washed away any childhood bond between us. And back then we were too young to remember anything clearly anyway. The system finally said the words, "Host, your mission has failed. After midnight, you will be erased." I had mentally prepared myself, yet when I truly heard it, I still felt unwillingness and resentment. I closed my eyes in despair and weakly asked, "Can you at least let me choose how I die?" If it couldn't grant my request, I wouldn't force it. The system remained silent for a long time. Just when I had lost all hope and was quietly waiting for death, the system's voice sounded again. "Host, I've extended your time by 36 hours. I'm sorry, host. This is all I can do for you." I smiled and shook my head. "You've already helped me enough." My expression was misunderstood by my cousin Miranda, who had been next to me the whole time. To her, my tears were all for love. She sighed and tried to comfort me. "Jessica, there are countless good men in this world. Why hang yourself on Paul's crooked tree? Many people had asked me that question before. Back then, in order to marry Paul, my answer was, because Paul is my life. And he truly was my life. Only by successfully completing the mission, marrying him, could I stay alive. So every wealthy family in Haicheng knew I was a hopeless romantic, and they secretly mocked me behind my back. Thinking of this, I slowly opened my eyes and looked at Miranda. I gave her an indifferent smile. Don't worry, cousin. I won't obsess over Paul anymore. Because he himself had ruined my life. I didn't have long left anyway. Before long, the news of Paul running away from the wedding shot straight to the trending searches. Someone also leaked that his first love had returned to the country. The implication was obvious. I was in a bathroom stall when I saw all the online comments and at the same time heard several rich socialites outside sneering. So it was because his first love came back. No wonder the young master ran from the wedding. Wasn't it Jessica's fault they were forced apart back then? She's a textbook lovesick fool. Serves her right. That kind of hopeless romantic must be losing her mind right now. Did you see her face today? It was hideous. Their unrestrained laughter continued. Honestly, I never cared about how others saw me. So hearing their ridicule didn't stir much in my heart. Then Miranda's angry voice sounded outside. Do you girls have any basic decency? The socialites instantly fell silent. My family ranked second in all of Haicheng. Our businesses stretched across the entire country, and my parents loved philanthropy, so many powerful families showed us respect. Especially when someone was caught gossiping behind our backs. But although they would give face to my family, they would not show the same courtesy to the Chun family, Miranda's family. One of the socialites sneered. Miranda, your families are only related by marriage. And Jessica was dumped at the altar. She did it and we can't talk about it. Miranda instantly fell silent, unable to refute. After all, what they said was true. I stood up, pushed open the stall door and walked out. When the socialites saw me, they suddenly looked guilty. I passed them without a glance and stopped in front of Miranda. Cousin, those who haven't gone through it can't be expected to empathize with me. Don't waste your breath on them. Let's go. After leaving the hotel, she drove me home. Home, the marital home Paul and I had chosen together. A luxury apartment in the best area of the city. We once imagined our future life together inside those walls. And now the empty home held only me and cold, lifeless furniture. I stood on the balcony overlooking the dazzling city below. System, I've figured it out. I've figured out how I want to die. The system asked. Host, how do you intend to die? I smiled faintly. And didn't answer. Chapter 3 in everyone's eyes. Alicia was a pure, flawless white rose. Born poor, yet always repaying hatred with kindness, carrying a gentle heart. But I had seen her real face. Only I had seen it. I had to admit. Alicia's facade of innocence was crafted beautifully. But this time I intended to tear off that mask of false purity to let everyone see her true nature, and let Paul regret it for the rest of his life. I still remembered, when I first arrived in this novel world, it happened to be the moment Paul was found and brought home. Paul had promised the curious Alicia, Alicia, you used to protect me. From now on, I'll be the one protecting you. And just like that, Alicia stayed. Paul's family merely saw her as a benefactor. Everyone else still expected Paul and me to end up together. After all, we had a childhood engagement. One afternoon after class, Alicia blocked my path. By then, she no longer looked like the girl who had just entered Paul's house. No more cheap dresses, no more terrified expressions. She had long grown used to wearing luxury clothes, and even her demeanor had changed. She looked down at me from above, reminding me casually, Jessica, don't think that just because you and Paul had a childhood engagement, he'll like you. You were separated for 10 years. Right now, the person he cares about most is me. Paul belongs to me. The feelings we built through shared experiences are unshakable. I advise you to give up. Her so-called kind reminder only made me think she was insane. As someone who wanted to stay alive, how could I possibly give up? After that, Alicia created many obstacles for me, allowing herself to build a kind-hearted heroine persona, while making things difficult for me in the shadows. But later, Paul's family strongly opposed their relationship, and Alicia's dream of marrying Paul collapsed. They fought fiercely, and after leaving the country, she married someone else. Ironically, it was her departure that allowed Paul's and my relationship to finally move forward. Paul treated me exceptionally well. He gave me every ounce of his gentleness. Eventually, we started discussing marriage and preparing for the wedding. But I never expected Alicia to return at this time. My hand drifted to my lower abdomen as I thought silently, "Baby, it seems the two of us were never fated to live together after all." At that moment my phone rang. The unfamiliar number made something in my intuition tighten. Alicia. Sure enough, as soon as I answered, her voice came through. "Jessica, long time no see. What do you want?" I asked coldly. "I'll send you a location. Come over. There's a good show to watch." Alicia said no more and hung up. A moment later, I received a text message with the address. An abandoned steel factory in the Southern District. Before leaving, I packed something and called my cousin to pick it up later. Then I went to meet Alicia as instructed. No one was there. But in the next second, someone covered my mouth and nose and everything went black. When I regained consciousness, I found myself by the sea. I scrambled up from the ground in panic. "Jessica." Alicia's voice echoed from a distance. I saw her tied up, standing on a reef by the shoreline. The tide was rising. Waves were slamming against the rocks, slowly swallowing them. Alarm shot through me. I shouted, "Alicia, what are you trying to do?" "Jessica, I'm going to show you who Paul really loves." Alicia smiled triumphantly. "He's here. He's here." I followed Alicia's gaze and saw Paul walking toward us from afar. Chapter 4. After Paul walked over, Alicia immediately burst into delicate tears and cried out pitifully, "Paul, you're finally here. Please save me. The tide is rising, Paul, I'm so scared." The scene was arranged so perfectly that it looked like I had kidnapped Alicia and thrown her onto the reef. Paul's expression grew heavy. His brows knitted together as he looked at me. Alicia quickly added, "Paul, Jessica only acted on impulse. She tied me up because she was overwhelmed. Please don't blame her. It's my fault for ruining your wedding." I hadn't said a single word, and somehow I had already become the villain. "Paul." I called his name softly, but before I could say another word, he cut me off harshly. "Jessica, missing the wedding yesterday was my fault. But you shouldn't have laid a hand on Alicia." His tone carried accusation and disappointment. I couldn't help but laugh and ask, "So in your heart, I've always been a cruel and vicious person?" "Jessica," he murmured, shaking his head as he walked toward the reef. He struggled to pull Alicia free, carrying her back to shore and untying her ropes. Watching this, all I felt was coldness. The sea breeze whipped my hair, but it also chilled my heart. At this point, what was there left to hold on to? Paul, believe me or don't, I didn't touch Alicia. I looked straight into his eyes as I spoke, but Alicia began crying softly again, her body trembling. "Why, it wasn't Jessica. Paul, it was my fault. I tied myself up and walked onto the reef." Paul stared at me. "Jessica, you've really disappointed me." I knew Paul believed Alicia. I grabbed Alicia's hand and said, "People see everything you do. Aren't you afraid of karma?" But Alicia suddenly became hysterical, thrashing as if she had lost her mind. She was acting again. Paul panicked and rushed between us, trying to pull me away with force. Suddenly, the grip on my wrist loosened. I stumbled backward and landed hard on the rocks. A sharp object drove into my back. The pain was overwhelming. I swallowed a groan. Paul held Alicia tightly in his arms, gently patting her back until she calmed down again. "Alicia's husband has been abusing her for a long time. When you touched her, she reacted instinctively." Paul looked at me as he explained. Alicia leaned against his chest and cried uncontrollably. "Paul, I'm scared. I'm really scared. Did I lose control again? My heart. It feels so messy, Paul." Her words tumbled out in chaotic fragments. Paul swept her into his arms and began to leave, soothing her in a soft voice. "Don't be afraid. I'm right here. I'll take you to a doctor right now." His steps grew faster. As they walked away, Alicia turned her head back and shot me a meaningful, triumphant smile. Once the two of them disappeared, I could no longer hold myself upright. I reached back with trembling fingers, and when I looked at my hand, it was covered in blood. A jagged rock had pierced into my back. The pain had already numbed my body. Host, your life force is rapidly decreasing. Chapter 5. I never expected to die this way. Killed by Paul's own hands. But maybe it was fitting. I felt so tired. My body could no longer support me. I collapsed onto the sand. When I opened my eyes again, I was following Paul. I froze confused. The system explained, Host, this is an out-of-body state. So that was it. My soul had left my body. Paul gently placed Alicia in the passenger seat, coaxing her softly like she was a fragile treasure. Alicia, we'll be at the hospital soon. Wait for me just a moment. He closed the door and stepped aside to make a phone call, his gaze drifting toward my collapsed body on the beach. I spoke aloud even though he couldn't hear me. I didn't expect to die like this either. He said into the phone. Marco, come to the holiday beach and check on Jessica. I'm with Alicia. She tied Alicia to the reef and nearly caused an accident. Alicia had an episode. I need to take her to the hospital. I don't feel safe leaving Jessica alone at the shore. And the tide is rising. Heh, so he did know how to worry about me. Was I hearing things? Marco was Paul's closest friend. But what Paul didn't know was that Marco had always secretly been in love with Alicia. He had no way of knowing. Marco was always cautious, always discreet. No one knew. How did I know? It happened at Alicia's 18th birthday party. Paul hosted it himself, lavish and extravagant, inviting every wealthy young heir in the circle. Alicia shone like a goddess, surrounded by admirers, held up like the brightest star in the sky. Everything went as expected, until it didn't. Alicia suddenly accused me of staining her dress. She cried delicately, attracting endless sympathy. A group of boys comforted her for a long time, and I was completely innocent. I was just walking out of the hall when I bumped into Marco. His cheeks were flushed. He was clearly tipsy. He stopped me. Jessica, Alicia and Paul belong together. Why are you forcing your way between them? You care a lot about Alicia, don't you? Do you like her? I asked casually. Marco's reaction was instant. Panicked, guilty. That was when I knew I had hit the mark. He snapped angrily. You're meddling in their relationship. Be careful. You'll bring karma on yourself. Yes, and here it was karma. The system suddenly spoke. Host, if Marco brings you to the hospital, your consciousness may return to your body. You might have a chance to survive. I asked in disbelief. You mean I could come back to life? It's a random possibility. I can't guarantee anything. The system sounded helpless. But would Marco really save me? I wanted to live, desperately, but I didn't dare put my hopes on Marco. No hope means no disappointment. Paul seemed to remember something. Just as he was about to end the call, he added, Take good care of Jessica for me. After hanging up, he looked toward the shore, toward my lifeless body, and let out a long heavy sigh before walking to the driver's seat and opening the door. Meanwhile, Alicia slid her phone back into her pocket and gave Paul a weak, feeble smile. Chapter 6. I followed the two of them all the way to the hospital. After Paul had the doctor examine Alicia, he brought her back home. Alicia grabbed Paul's hand just as he was about to leave and said softly, Paul, can you stay with me tonight? I was stunned. After years apart, shouldn't their reunion be full of passion and rekindled love? Instead, Paul loosened her grip, giving Alicia a long, meaningful look. Perhaps she wasn't used to being seen that way by him. She shifted uncomfortably and asked, Why are you looking at me like that? Thank you for bringing me home. Paul, do you know? These past years I've never had a single night of good sleep. I lived in violence every day. There isn't an inch of unbruised skin on my body. But last night, I slept well. Alicia. Paul cut her off before she could continue rambling. Yesterday was my wedding day with Jessica. It was the first time I had ever seen Paul show such a serious expression toward Alicia. Alicia's eyes filled with tears as she looked up at him pitifully. I finally escaped back to the country. How was I supposed to know it was your wedding day? If I had known, I never would have called you. If it wasn't for Jessica, I wouldn't have been forced to go abroad and marry that man. I wouldn't have suffered years of abuse. If she really loved you, really cared about you, why would she tie me to the reef? The more she spoke, the more aggrieved she sounded. Her emotions spiraled as she pushed Paul toward the door. Fine, it's all my fault. Just go. If I had known this would happen, I never should have left the orphanage with you. Go. Don't come see me again. I'll just return to him tomorrow. Let him beat me to death. Seeing this, Paul immediately panicked. He rushed back inside and held Alicia tightly in his arms, patting her back comfortingly. Alicia, what are you saying? If it weren't for you back then, I would have been beaten to death at the orphanage. I'll apologize to Jessica for you, okay? Alicia gave Paul a deep, loaded look. Paul, we depended on each other for 10 years. To me, you're like a real little brother. But Jessica misunderstood us. She made things hard for me. She spread rumors about me. Paul, are you really willing to marry a cruel, cold-hearted woman like her? She clearly knew about our relationship, yet she still wanted to hurt me. Who knows, maybe one day she'll turn against you too. Alicia, enough. Paul cut her off sharply and turned his body away. Get some rest. I'm going home. If something happens, call me. Listen to that. Alicia said all of that without blushing or blinking. What did she mean I made things hard for her? What did she mean I spread rumors? All of it. Nothing but the trap she set to frame me. Paul left the house. After getting into his car, he didn't start it immediately. He pressed both hands against the steering wheel, resting his forehead on the seat, lost deep in thought. After who knows how long, he finally picked up his phone and dialed my number. But my phone was turned off. He frowned and called Marco instead. When I got there, the beach was empty. I ran into an old man selling trinkets. He said he saw a young girl walk away. He must have meant Jessica. Marco replied lazily, her phone's off. Totally normal. You ditched her on your wedding day, and made her the laughingstock of the entire city. Give it a few days, she'll calm down. Chapter 7. Hearing Marco's words, I couldn't help asking the system curiously. Was I rescued? The system replied with only 2 words. No. I murmured calmly. Oh, so I was washed away by the tide. The system let out a long sigh, its voice filled with regret. You were thrown into the sea by Marco. What? My soul froze in shock. At that moment, an image surfaced in my mind, a memory. When Marco arrived at the beach, I was already on the verge of death. But instinctively, I still had the desire to survive. Yet when he saw me lying in a pool of blood, reaching helplessly toward him for help, he hesitated. He crouched in front of me, looking at me the same way one might admire a painting. A deep, unsettling gaze. Jessica, I heard you kidnapped Alicia and tied her to the reef. She almost died because of you. I was dying. How could I possibly answer him? My arm only twitched weakly. Marco's lips curled slightly. Jessica, if you hadn't clung to Paul so desperately, Alicia never would have been forced to go abroad. She never would have suffered abuse. All of this is your fault. Now that Alicia is finally back and she and Paul both like each other, you need to step aside. Marco always appeared gentle and refined, but who could have imagined such a beast hid beneath that exterior? The system said. Marco is the definition of a polished monster. A wolf in gentleman's clothing. Marco looked around. Seeing no one and no cameras, he lifted me off the ground and slowly walked toward the sea. The tide was rising. Without a shred of hesitation, Marco threw me into the ocean. The moment my body hit the water, salt water flooded into my wounds. The agony was so intense that I lost consciousness instantly, and the waves dragged my body farther and farther toward the open sea. Marco's expression twisted into crazed satisfaction. Seeing my body drift away, he wiped his bloody hands on his clothes and turned to leave. He pulled out his phone and made a call. She's dead. No one will compete with you for Paul anymore. From those words, was he speaking to Alicia? The voice on the other end confirmed it. Alicia feigned shock. Marco, how did she die? Marco chuckled quietly. She barely had a breath left. I threw her into the sea. The waves carried her away. From now on, nothing will stand between you and Paul. He hung up. On the other end, Alicia smiled, bright with satisfaction. Watching everything, I couldn't help speaking to the system bitterly. So I die without clarity? Without meaning? The system gently reassured me. Host, don't worry. The real drama is just beginning. Real drama. What drama? My soul followed Paul back to our home. My cousin was waiting. When she saw Paul alone, she frowned harshly and demanded, Where is Jessica? Jessica turned off her phone because she's angry, Paul said tiredly. That's impossible. Cousin Miranda didn't believe it at all. She strode forward, grabbed Paul by the tie and glared fiercely. Jessica is pregnant. If something happens to her, I swear I will never forgive you. Paul froze. His expression shattered. What did you say? Jessica is pregnant. He looked at her wildly. Is it true? Miranda let out a cold laugh. Paul, who would joke about something like that? She's 4 months along. She was planning to tell you after the wedding. And what were you doing? You ran away from the wedding. Chapter 8. Perhaps because Paul learned I was pregnant, he kept calling me again and again. But whether it was Paul or my cousin calling, all they heard was the cold reminder. The number you have dialed is powered off. I had completely disappeared. Paul paced back and forth in the living room, extremely anxious, even starting to search for my whereabouts through every means he could think of. He didn't know that the sea had already carried my body away long ago. My cousin sat on the couch, crying in panic. She glared at Paul with eyes full of warning. If something happens to my cousin, I will never forgive you. At this moment, Paul was already falling apart. He shook his head slightly, his voice unsteady. Jessica will be fine. She definitely will be fine. Her biggest wish in this life has always been to marry me. She must be hiding somewhere, waiting for me to find her. When I find her, I'll make sure to give her the grandest wedding. Hearing that nonsense, I felt nothing but deep disgust. I couldn't help commenting. You think I can't live without you? You think I care about your stupid wedding? Even the system spoke up for me. Exactly. Late affection is worth less than grass. Where was all this devotion earlier? Yes, where was it earlier? Even though my approach to Paul had always been mission-driven, 10 years of growing up together still created some emotion, however faint. But now it was simply meaningless. A full day passed and still no news of me. Paul, sitting on the sofa, looked like he had aged overnight, unshaven, disheveled, exhausted, and utterly defeated. My cousin leaned back against the couch about to stand, but accidentally pressed the remote, turning on the TV. A breaking news segment appeared. The anchor reported, early this morning, a fisherman found a female corpse while out at sea. Police have been notified. The screen switched to the scene, chaos everywhere. Police, forensic staff, reporters, and shocked fishermen filled the frame. As the corpse was lifted onto the stretcher, an arm slipped off the side. A bracelet slid into view. Paul and my cousin froze. A wave of dread swept over them. That bracelet looks so familiar. My cousin whispered, terrified. But we all knew she already had the answer in her heart. Paul murmured, his voice trembling. I bought Jessica a bracelet like that once. The next second, my cousin's phone rang. It was the police station. With trembling hands, she answered. Is this Ms. Miranda? Hearing the officer's voice, my cousin's last bit of hope died completely. Her eyes turned red as she closed them heavily. Yes, this is she. And are you Jessica's cousin? The officer asked again. Yes. The word left her lips painfully, like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Please come to the Yungang police station immediately. After the call ended, my cousin slapped Paul across the face. A brutal ringing strike. My cousin is dead. Are you satisfied now? She was only 21. She was carrying your child. She loved you so much. And what about you? You are the one who killed her. She slapped him again. Good hit, the system said. Yes, good hit indeed. Paul was stunned, unable to process anything. He shook his head repeatedly, horrified. No? Impossible. Jessica can't be dead. When I left yesterday, she was perfectly fine. How could she die overnight? It must be fake news. My cousin and Paul arrived at the police station. The first thing the officer said to her was, Ms. Miranda, please accept our condolences. Your cousin Jessica was murdered. My cousin finally lost control. Her emotions erupted as she cried out. Have you caught the killer? Who is it? The officer's expression was grim. We have already identified the suspect. Please come with us to claim the body. My cousin and Paul followed the officers into the autopsy room, where my body lay under a white sheet, leaving only my pale face exposed. I lay there quietly on the cold metal table, completely motionless. The forensic doctor said, the victim's back was injured by sharp reef rocks. She lost too much blood and the final cause of death was drowning. The victim was also 4 months pregnant. Miss Chun, if everything looks correct, please sign the form. I saw Paul freeze in place. His eyes widened in disbelief, his face drained of color, and suddenly his emotions spiraled out of control. Officer, I saw her just yesterday. She was fine, she was perfectly fine. The officer looked at Paul with a cold, mocking stare. Tomorrow in accidents, no one knows which will arrive first. Haven't you heard that saying? What's the use of feeling sad in front of a corpse now? Why didn't you think of this when you ran away from your wedding? My cousin finished signing the form and handed it back to the forensic doctor. Can I take my cousin with me now? Yes, the doctor replied with a nod. Only now did Paul fully accept the truth that I was gone. And he was consumed with agony. My cousin turned to Paul and shouted, "Get out of my sight!" But Paul suddenly became sentimental, looking at her with guilt in his eyes. Miranda, if it weren't for you, Jessica would never have ended up like this. And you still have the nerve to cry here. Paul turned as if to leave but was stopped by the officer. Mr. Paul, you cannot leave. The officer's tone was harsh. Paul stopped. Officer, is there something else? The officer showed his badge. I'm an officer from Longgang Precinct. You are suspected of involvement in Jessica's death. You must come with us. Paul was stunned. My cousin froze for a second, then walked up and slapped him hard across the face. Paul, so it was you who harmed Jessica. You bastard. The officers immediately restrained her. Miss Miranda, please calm down. Paul is only a suspect at this stage. Only a suspect? Then who is the real killer? Tell me who killed her. My cousin screamed hysterically, her face flushed red. I'm sorry, ma'am. We will inform you as soon as the investigation has results, the officer said apologetically. My cousin finally broke. Her knees buckled and she collapsed onto the floor, sobbing in agony. A female officer rushed over to help her up and escorted her out. Paul, regaining his voice, turned to the officers anxiously. Officer, how did Jessica die? Why am I a suspect? You want answers. The officer stared at him coldly. Then come with us. Chapter 10. I followed them into the interrogation room. Paul, who was used to sitting in a CEO chair, sat in an interrogation chair for the first time. Wearing a suit and leather shoes, he looked completely out of place here. There were 3 officers present. Paul couldn't wait and immediately asked, Officers, how exactly did Jessica die? One of the officers held up a photo. Paul, who is this woman? What is your relationship with her? Paul glanced at the picture, his expression shaken. That's Alicia. We grew up in the same orphanage. Later she returned home with me. And this person? The officer held up another photo. Paul frowned. That's Marco. He's a close friend of mine. A moment later, something seemed to connect in Paul's mind and his emotions suddenly grew agitated. I need to call my lawyer. The middle-aged officer stood and walked over, took out a phone and opened a video for Paul to watch. I leaned closer as well. It was the footage of Alicia going hysterical, the scene of me, Alicia, and Paul struggling. In the video it was very clear Paul pushed me and I fell backward onto the sharp reef rock. The moment I hit the ground my expression changed dramatically. But Paul had not noticed. Paul stared at the video stunned. I called Marco and told him to check on Jessica. He said she left. The younger officer let out a cold chuckle, unable to hold back the sarcasm. Your own fiancée, you didn't go see her yourself and had someone else check on her? Did Jessica jump into the sea? Paul looked horrified, eyes wide. The middle-aged officer answered steadily. No. She didn't jump. Marco threw her into the sea. Paul's eyes widened even further. What? Marco killed Jessica? That's impossible. Marco is only an accomplice. The mastermind is Alicia, the middle-aged officer continued. Paul completely froze like his mind had crashed. The officer sighed deeply. The story about Jessica kidnapping Alicia to the seashore? It was all a performance Alicia staged herself. She had already learned abroad that you and Jessica were marrying, so she intentionally timed her return. The domestic violence, the mental illness, all fabricated. All for one reason. She wanted you. And Marco, he has been secretly in love with Alicia for years. to the point of insanity. In his eyes, Jessica was an obstacle standing between Alicia and you. So when Jessica was dying, he didn't save her. He finished her. Watching Paul's expression collapse, confusion twisting into regret, felt almost poetic. I murmured to the system. So system, what do you think Paul is thinking right now after hearing the truth? In Paul's heart, Alicia had always been a pure, kind angel. Officer, you must be mistaken. Paul's voice trembled. The young officer laughed coldly. Police don't arrest people at random. The entire incident at the beach was recorded by a passerby. And we recovered Alicia and Marco's chat logs. Both of them confessed. Paul's surprising, isn't it? The woman you idolized is actually a monster. Paul shook his head frantically. I only ever felt sibling affection for Alicia. The one I loved from beginning to end was Jessica. But I only felt disgust. If he truly loved me, he wouldn't have abandoned me at the altar. The young officer clearly didn't believe him either. You failed to save a life. Now go repent in prison.